One thing I want to improve at role selection is building rapport. I think it's crucial when you're doing BD that you can build rapport, and I don't think you'll do big sales, certainly the magnitude that we operate at with the fee size, if you haven't got that rapport level. So here's a session working on 3 areas that will definitely improve that. Right, building rapport with a prospect. So I think this is something we can definitely all work on, even myself, with regards to that rapport piece. You cannot sell to somebody effectively unless you are in rapport at the size deals that we sell. You have to be in rapport. If, let's say, for example, you want a mobile phone, you know what mobile phone you want, you walk into the mobile phone shop and you buy that said mobile phone, that's fine, albeit mobile phones are now a large depending on how you define a large transaction, £1,000, on a personal income, a large transaction from a business perspective is not. So you're then buying that product, but you already wanted it, you knew what you wanted, you probably already researched it, and you go to the shop to buy it. The individual selling it is of absolutely no benefit whatsoever. That individual in the car phone warehouse, if they still exist or whatever, O2 store, they're just there to facilitate your transaction. So rapport in that manner is absolutely useless. As long as they're polite, courteous, then you'll still continue the conversation and discussion. If they're rude to you, you may walk out and go somewhere else, but you're still going to go to the same business and buy it. So in order for you, on large transactions, rapport is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. If you're in rapport with that individual, then you are able to sell to that individual with any large transaction. I can pretty much guarantee you, if you are out of rapport on a large transaction, you will not sell. It is that damn important. So, in order to be in rapport with a prospect, we have to consider loads and loads of different things. But if I highlight the areas that I want to focus on today, and there's 3 of them, one is the conversation flow. Okay? So, how that conversation ebbs and flows from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Okay? So, for example, if they start talking about experience required, and you go back to what's the reason for the vacancy, your flow is broken. Because later on in the conversation, you're going to be like, so what experience do you need? And they're like, well, I was trying to tell you that earlier, you weren't listening. It's about that flow of the conversation. So, oh, Alex, we've had issues here, issues there. Let me stop you there, Mr. Klein. My first question is, what's the reason for the vacancy? I'm just about to tell you about all my pain and all my issues, and you just stop me by asking me a different question. Now I'm off a different train of thought. Okay? Doesn't mean you come out of rapport by doing that. It just doesn't help rapport. So you can do these bits and pieces and still remain in rapport and get these bits wrong, but it only reduces. If you thought of it like a lifeline on a PlayStation game, your lifeline will be going down. If you're at 100 when you start, which you won't be because you can't build rapport at 100, but if you're at 50 when you start, you then get at 45. And then once you start getting into that 30s mode, you're out selling perspective, and you're dead, game over, start again. On Grand Theft Auto, you wasted. So that conversation flow is really important. This all stems off the conversation flow, but what I tend to find is, with salespeople, is we're that flaming interested about what we're going to say next, we're not thinking about what they're saying. They start talking about something that you know, and immediately you're wanting to talk to them. Oh yeah, let me tell you. And they're like, yeah, you just interrupted me, brilliant. So listening to them and letting them talk and allowing them to have their point. If they start talking about your specialist subject, let them talk about it, right? So if from an eye perspective, if they start talking about their trip to Nigeria, let them tell you about their trip to Nigeria before you start telling them that your mum's from Nigeria and you've been to Nigeria and you're doing this, because they don't care. They want to tell you about what you're doing, and then you may be able to go, well, that's really interesting, once they've finished, and then go, I absolutely love Nigeria, and that's such a great thing. I'm also doing X, Y, and Z. If they go, oh, where are you going on holiday? I'm going to Nigeria. Oh, let me tell you. Right, and they're like, yeah, okay, right, great. So let them have the communication, then you share your little piece, right? Obviously, I'm using an example there that's never happened, but it's a good Good example. Start talking about football. And they're like, oh yeah, that's what this guy, they're down, lost 6-1. Let them tell you that information, let them share you it, and then you top up on top of it, should you need to. And ask questions on top of it. Why did you choose Nigeria? That's really interesting. My heritage is from Nigeria. What made you choose Nigeria? Allow them to communicate, allow them to share their story. What you'll find is executives and people who are in leadership positions like talking about their success, what they've done, and what they've achieved. Right? It's the same reason why when you go on a prospect call, it's cold, and the first question you ask is, how are you? It's just a shit way of selling, because you don't care how well they are, and they don't care how well you are. Right? If they ask you, it's polite to respond. But how good is it when you go, how are you? And they go, yeah, I'm fine. Oh, brilliant. Right, okay, so shit. Because they don't give a shit about you and how well you are. Let's get down to business. We're all time poor. We've all got things to do. And I don't care if you're well or not, because I've never met you, I've never spoken to you before, and the first question you're asking me is how well I am. And who's ever answered that question with, I am bloody awful today. Right? So it's a pointless conversation unless they instigate that as the warm-up act for the rest of the discussion. So listening to your prospects, letting them talk and asking them questions. You know, private equity, we used an example of this yesterday and we ran through it, and making sure that we're followed up on that. So point number 3 is allowing your personality to come through, allowing you as an individual to communicate, you as how you communicate coming round and coming through. Okay? So everyone's got their own personality. Everyone's, you know, when you're a baby and you start growing up, oh, they've got personality now, they're cheeky, they're this, they're that, they're boring, they're miserable, right? If you're boring and miserable, maybe not, but let's let that personality come through. Let's let a little bit, you don't have to be audacious and outlandish on that call, but you are your own selling point, your own unique perspective. So allowing that to come across in a candidate call, in a prospect call, in an update call with a client, and allowing that communication to come through and allowing that to go out. And you will attract the type of people. If you look at in 5 years' time, if you look at your client base, there will all be people like you. Right? The clients that we work with best in this business that I've won are all transactional. I don't know anything about their kids. I don't know anything about their home. I know nothing about their business. But my process of selling is, I don't like fluff. I don't like all the bit that runs around it. What I like to do is get the job done. So if that's the way you operate, that's the type of client that you will win. If that's not how you operate, you will win a different type of client. And there's no right or wrong, that's just how you win it. And then I've always found it very hard to sell to HR because of that. So I've had to adapt my ability to be able to communicate and ask them out. Whose kids this, whose kids that, to the process to win it, because that's how I run in my mind. So those 3 steps are really important. 1, the conversation flow. That all links into the whole conversation of point 2 and 3. 2, listen to them, let them talk, let them share their story, ask a question, let them talk, let them share their story. 3, allow your personality to come through and engage with the prospect.